What can you say about a season like the one just gone? Well, it's bad enough that I've cancelled one of my end of season videos based on the player salaries in a tier ranking. I'm guessing it would be quite repetitive deciding on who was value for money and who was a waste of money. But anyway, here's a list of the player salaries. You can decide for yourselves who were the best and worst investments for the season. From last autumn until now, we all have memories and feelings of massive disappointment, almost shock at how poor we've been, and even more so of anger towards the vast majority of the squad regarding their mentality and attitude. But this wasn't how many of us felt at the start. After signing Jadon Sancho, finally, and Raphael Varane, a lot of us were quite bullish, thinking that we could kick on from a decent runners-up position from the year before and brushing European success. The Varane signing seemed to be the most crucial. Finally, Harry Maguire would have a top-class centre-back partner. The likes of Bailly, Lindelof, Tuanzebe, looking anything but that at the back end of the 2021 campaign. The buzz around these incomings was accentuated by the signing of the GOAT, Cristiano Ronaldo, and his homecoming, especially when it was heavily rumoured that he was probably going to City just before the transfer window closed. It was very premature, but we almost felt like we were top dogs again, and things were finally coming together. Just a side note, there was of course the Ollie out brigade, but they were very much sidelined as we started the campaign very strongly. My personal predictions, as per the preview on the 21-22 season video, weren't as bullish. At best they were mixed. I felt the defence was still iffy, there needed to be a move away from McFred, and that the Donny situation, which became very divisive as did every decision with Ollie's last year or so as manager, needed to be sorted. I also felt some decisions like not going after Liverpool at an empty COVID-affected Anfield in the season just gone, when they were onto their second set of midfielders at centre-back, that Ole needed to be more pragmatic, ruthless and aggressive. I felt that this was Ole's make or break season. He needed to properly challenge after being heavily backed in the summer. Some silverware was necessary, or at least to push City and Liverpool to the last couple of games in a title race. Furthermore, I was critical of Ole's unnecessary 3-year summer contract extension. Whilst I believe that he should get an extension at some point, we weren't exactly under pressure by suitors sniffing around for the Norwegian signature. And after seeing how the fixtures fell and that we were given a tough set of autumn matches, then we should just wait till after they'd all been played. Instead, he essentially got a 3-year deal without winning anything, just showing some steady progress over the last 2.5 years. I was also vainly hoping for a clear out back then, but only Dan James was a player of any note that left. It's not even taking advantage of hindsight to say that we should have cashed in on players who are running their contracts down, like Lingard and Pogba. Why Ole or the board wanted them and others like Matic and Mata, goodness only knows why. My stance on Ole nevertheless was to support the manager. Okay, so if you're brave enough, let's start the review of the actual season. Seeing as autumn would probably dictate the direction of the campaign, I called for 15 plus points from our first 7 games. It started well enough, with one of our best performances of the season at home against Leeds. A fantastic Bruno hat-trick and a Fred collector's item included. The draw at St Mary's against Southampton was disappointing and gave us a bit of a reality check in the next game. But then we won against Newcastle 4-1, which was more of a celebration due to Ronaldo's second debut for the club. However, the Geordies were well drilled under Brucey. We struggled early on. Only a goalkeeping error just before half-time, thanks to you-know-who, put us ahead. They equalised early in the second half, and if they'd shown any sort of discipline that they'd exhibited before the break, we may have struggled for a winner. They didn't, and we won comfortably in the end, but regardless, there was a bit of foreshadowing there. It didn't take long for things to really go south. A defeat to Villa and a draw to Everton, both at home, were bad results, and we hadn't even hit the rough patch or the tough fixtures yet. The next game, the 4-2 loss at Leicester, which began the 7 games of hell in earnest, was shambolic. Then the worst performance I've ever seen United produce. The home 5-0 defeat to Liverpool, losing 4-0 at half-time, was surreal. Pogba's sending off was a metaphor for his Old Trafford career. When we needed him to be the player he thinks he is the most, he made things more difficult or went missing. This time he did both. Personally, I'd have fired the Norwegian there and then. He's a legend, no doubt. He's a legendary player though, not a manager, and he clearly lost the dressing room. I do blame the players, of course. It wasn't Ollie playing against the scum that day, but these men were fundamentally his players, playing his way, with his tactics, philosophy and culture. When we saw United teams of the past, whether it be under Busby, the Doc, Big Ron, Fergie or someone else, it was their side. This was Ollie's. Ollie's a gent but also a soft touch. That fed into the players' unprofessional side, that they understood that they could get away with anything, including a lack of effort and professionalism. The core 11, 12, 13 players all knew that they wouldn't lose their places to the likes of a Dalot or Tellez or even a youngster. Anyway, my full analysis of what led up to Ollie's demise is featured in another link. The link is in the description. Next, the side salvaged some pride in a very good performance against a poor Spurs team, 3-0. It still didn't make up for the Old Trafford debacle though. Next up was the derby at Old Trafford, and it was like a repeat of the Liverpool game. City let us off this time, winning just 2-0. It could have been 6. For me, this was the peak of Luke Shaw's unprofessionalism, not tracking back and failing to cut out Bernardo Silva's shot for a 2-0 lead just before the break. Ollie's support amongst our fan base was dropping off in its thousands by this point. The 4-1 defeat to an atrocious Watford side in the next game was the final straw, and Ollie had to go. And it was Watford's biggest win against us since 1985. This made it crystal clear that this manager was done. I've not really talked about the cup competitions till now. Well, we went out cheaply at home to West Ham in the League Cup as the boss played his fringe players. The Champions League was, however you wanted to interpret it as a fan. Either you thought it was exciting and all the comebacks and or last minute wins, albeit in a really straightforward group containing Villarreal, Atalanta and Young Boys, was United of old. Or you saw through the tissue paper covering the deepening cracks of this side, which was being carried by Ronaldo's genius and De Gea's heart. By the time the Norwegian was given his marching orders, we needed a result in the penultimate game to go through, but that would be the caretaker manager's concern, namely Michael Carrick. We had a solid, albeit brief, period under Carrick, and it showed that the players still did have some heart and professionalism, which led to massive criticism as to why they hadn't bothered under Ollie. Carrick's side secured Champions League knockout round football after disposing of Villarreal away, and managed to draw and win in league games against Chelsea away and Arsenal at home. To most people's surprise, it would be German Ralf Rangnick, the football philosopher and the godfather of Gegenpress, who would take over after the Arsenal win. There'd been criticism of Rangnick's appointment, but who else could we have got who would have either left their own post mid-season or would have taken the Old Trafford hot seat for just 6 months? It was a thankless task unless he could do the unbelievable and make us play as a team again. Regardless, it was still a strange appointment. His philosophy is about hard work and to constantly press, which is massive ask of a side which statistically did collectively the least amount of running of any top flight side up to that point, and as he was only going to be there for 6 months, his leverage with the players was very low. It's easy to forget, but Rangnick's first 12 league games weren't yielding atrocious results, or for the most part, even performances. The away win at Leeds was one of the best of the season, as he yielded 25 points from those dozen games. It's true, there were some troubling displays in some of those matches, but anything was better than what we saw during the death throes of Ollie's reign, but that wasn't how it stayed. Need to pivot slightly as we can't, however, much as we want to, ignore Mason Greenwood's off-the-field impact on the club, with the graphic images on social media regarding him and his then-girlfriend. This happened at the end of January. We all have our own opinions, so I'll state from a football point of view that this couldn't have helped Rangnick having to deal with the press, the impact on the dressing room already bereft of cohesiveness, or even that he was now down another striker. There was already a steady flow of continuous negative rumours leaking from the dressing room, citing disrespect, unprofessionalism, general dissatisfaction with the German interim manager and so on. What's true or what's journalistic clickbait, who knows? But it was a bad situation. There was also another issue, injuries to key players. Varane was out for massive swathes of the season. Bailly was still made of Weetabix. My hero from last season, Edison Cavani, came and went as he pleased, even though we needed him to start matches, as well as other absentees. Ralph gets a lot of criticism, as I mentioned earlier, but he wasn't allowed to add or remove players from the squad in January, apart from loaning the likes of Van der Beek, Ahmad, Martial and others who were surplus to his requirements. The German had a broken squad, injury prone and with an unprofessional mentality. That said, a criticism of mine is that he went on holiday during the international break whilst we're in turmoil back in February. I thought it looked bad. Yes, he's entitled to a holiday, but he's only at the club for 6 months. We had 12 league games to go from the end of February, plus the Champions League tie against Atletico. After a fortunate yet credible 1-1 scoreline in Madrid, we then showed our lacklustre form at home again, losing just 1-0 but showing no passion to fight. A real signature of our play this campaign. From those last dozen league games and 36 points on offer, from a position of 4th, we won only 3 matches and garnered 11 points, dropping remarkably to only 6th spot. It's said that the table never lies, but I'd question the validity of this premise based on our season. There is no way we deserve 6th. We got 58 points, our worst tally since Fergie's job was hanging by a thread in the 89-90 season with a 0 goal difference. We were bang mid-table at best. A few more unenviable club stats were achieved this campaign. Amongst them were the fewest wins in a Premier League season, losing 4 straight away games for the first time since 80-81 season, the most goals conceded since the 78-79 season, the earliest FA Cup exit for 8 years, and it was West Ham's first win at Old Trafford in 15. Of those remaining 12 fixtures, 2 more were humiliating defeats to City and Liverpool, a draw against relegated Watford and a defeat to an Everton side who couldn't buy a win. Our penultimate loss 4-1 to Brighton was the Seagulls' biggest win against us in their history, and the final game against Palace was their first home triumph against us in 31 years. The victories we did have against Spurs, Norwich and Brentford were not at all convincing. Only because West Ham finished their season poorly did we earn a Europa League spot. We already understood after weeks of media speculation and articles that Ajax's Erik Ten Hag would take over at the end of the season, his appointment being officially made on the 21st of April 2022. If polls are to be believed, the majority of the United fan base are pleased with the appointment, which is in part due to the fact that he was successful at his previous club and the average United fan holds Ajax in such high regard. Man United and the Dutch giants hold many common facets. A philosophy with an emphasis on youth, a European pedigree, the relative size of the clubs, legendary players each one's had, and even in common, and so on. The new boss also breeds confidence in that he's won the league every season since he was there, apart from the voided COVID season. So I apologise if you're traumatised, but that was the season just gone. I'm guessing there are not too many surprises, but are there any positives? I guess Ronaldo. There was some criticism of signing him just before the start of the season, that he possibly disrupted the Norwegians' plans. But his goals, and important goals at that, surely meant that he's one of the few highlights for us. I suppose De Gea is the other. His keeping kept us in games we had no business to get anything out of. Some of Ronaldo's Man of the Match awards were founded on 10 out of 10 performances by the Spaniard. De Gea deserved his Players Player of the Year award. Ronaldo got the Sir Matt Busby Award for the fans player. I wasn't ruthless enough to be manager at the highest level. Again, my video on his departure goes into further detail. Regardless, I wish him all the best. The FA Youth Cup win, witnessed by 67,000 Reds at Old Trafford against a solid Forest side, shows that we may already have a few ready for promotion to the first team, such as Garnacho, who's already in the Argentina squad. Elanga showed character when he played and broke the record for the youngest ever Champions League goal scorer in the knockout stages. Midfield youngster James Garner helped Forest senior side to promotion to the top flight for the first time in 23 years. He certainly deserves a look at by Ten Hag. Sancho eventually started to play better, and considering the 21-year-old joined a dressing room that he couldn't have fathomed would be this unprofessional, I look forward to him kicking on next season under better circumstances. Another positive is that Pogba, Lingard, etc. are finally leaving. This is not a surprise to me, it's been a long time coming. Players, some excellent on their day, are finally being moved on. The almost unused Lee Grant has retired. Matic and Mata have officially been announced as moving on. Special mention has to go to Mata, who did it with class as he's shown during all his time at Old Trafford. Edison Cavani has also been released. I'm sure other departures will be announced over the next 2 months or so. Finally, we did see continued support to get rid of the Glazers, which, in light of the side's poor performances, may have nudged them slightly closer to the exit door. And negatives? How long have you got? As I mentioned in the start of the video, I called out the defence pre-season as still being inadequate, but Maguire, Wan-Bissaka, Shaw and others really showed that they aren't cut out for our great club. That said, Ten Hag can't make all the changes he wants in just one transfer window. Onto the midfield, Fred actually got on the score sheet a lot more than usual, and he gets off lightly compared to, say, McTominay, who looks at best a squad player. Matic was generally slow and also a rotation player. Pogba had some good games early on, but showed his perennial lack of professionalism throughout most of the campaign. As for the attacking midfielders, before I say anything about Bruno, I haven't forgot his first 18 months of the club. It's that probably makes his performances on the whole so disappointing. Bruno spent too much time on the floor and seemed to be the most spooked by Ronaldo's return. Just look at his penalty miss versus Villa in the Old Trafford defeat. There was definitely something mentally going on there. He did eventually play better in some games, matching his form from the first few matches, but I hope he'll have a clearer mind next term now the toxic elements have gone out of the club. By the way, you might not know, he did break the Champions League record of creating the most assists in successive matches, 6, beating David Beckham's previous best, also in our colours, back in 1998. As for Greenwood, apart from his performances with patchy leading up to the end of January, he was scoring goals 6 in 20 starts, but he did struggle too. In attack, Cavani was disappointing as previously mentioned. I didn't play enough. Well, everything at the moment is about Ten Hag and squad and transfer activity. I already like the cut of the new manager. He did point out that we aren't that bad and we came second the year before, which I raised my eyebrow to a bit. That finish was based on unusual COVID dictating circumstances, to be fair. But I assume that he wanted to make the point that the playing staff is not a complete write-off. Anyway, I'm bullish because that's my outlook. Still naive and trusting, but I do understand that it could get worse before it gets better. We need to fully back the new manager on social media and at games. Player-wise, who can we get in? Who will come to a club with clear internal problems, both at the boardroom level and in the dressing room, as well as no Champions League football? This is not the United of yesteryear, that just our famous name would be enough for elite player targets to flock to us. Even Barca's Frenkie de Jong, one of Ten Hag's former Ajax players, can't be easily convinced. As for other players we're looking at, a number of current Ajax stars are in our crosshairs, as well as the likes of Pau Torres from Villarreal. Well, we need a striker, a centre-back, another midfielder for starters, although I guess Donny van de Beek will be a starter for Ten Hag and will help the transition of the side, knowing how the boss likes to play. It will be quite a change from his ostracisation by Solskjær and Rangnick. Everything depends on who the boss thinks is expendable and who he can use for at least the coming season. You can't change everyone all at once, it'll take time. When he's 25 players, it's not 15 out and 15 in. As for my expectations, well, I touched on them. It may get worse before it gets better. I'm ready for that. What doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. I just hope we get the right players in and the useless players out the club so the Dutchman can cleanse the dressing room fully. Guessing what Ten Hag will want? I think the dressing room may well have some orange paint in there for the coming season. I'll give a more nuanced assessment in the preview video that will come before the start of the new campaign. So that was the 21-22 season, a season to forget. You've heard what I've had to say, now let me know what you think. Do you agree with some or all or nothing of what I've said? Have you got any insights that I missed, and how do you feel about the managerial comings and goings during this campaign? Comment below, and if you're feeling generous, like, share and subscribe. Thank you as always for your support.